Well, hello, and welcome back. We're doing a take two in the live stream here on getting WSL on Windows, just because the first time there was a couple technical issues I stumbled through, and it's kind of quicker to reshoot this than to edit it. In any case, if you are watching this as the live stream on YouTube, check the link in the description. You may prefer the edited version that's down there in the Beyond Code Bootcamp playlist. And also, I am watching comments on YouTube. It's a little hard to manage it between Facebook and Twitch and all that. So if you want to make any comments during the live stream, do that on YouTube, and I'll be happy to take your questions in real time. Otherwise, switch over to the other playlist and ask the questions there on the edited video. Okay, well, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Well, hello, and welcome back. We are doing a live... Oh, I'm going to restart that. Sorry for the people that are watching live here. Okay. Well, hello, and welcome back. What we're doing today is installing Linux, specifically with the Windows subsystem for Linux, also known as WSL and WSL2 on Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started by, let me share my screen here. All right. And this is kind of a 5-step process, and each of the steps seems simple enough, but I'll walk you through it because there's some caveats here. First thing, you need to do your Windows updates. This should sound obvious and simple to do, but again, there's caveats here, so I'm gonna explain where the problem is. When you go to do your Windows updates, oftentimes Windows will tell you that it's up to date because Windows 10 has different editions of Windows 10, and your edition of Windows 10 may be up to date, or it could just be lying to you. So first of all, if you don't see it saying you're up to date here, you're definitely not up to date. You might have to wait for some things to download. You might have to take manual action. But even if it says you're up to date, you may notice down below it says that there are things to download and install either right here or further down. So make sure you take a look at this page, give it 5 minutes to just sit there and do whatever communication it needs to do with the server. And before you think that all the updates are done, what I recommend is that you restart your computer once, come and check, wait 5 minutes, restart your computer twice, come and check, wait 5 minutes. If it still says you're up to date and there's no extra downloads, then you're good to go. Because there's different edition of Windows, you do need to be on the latest edition, or there's just a lot of confusion out there with the different steps that you take and what goes in what order. I've updated this for 2021. This process will work. So that's step one. Now, I'm actually not going to install this update. I left that there for the purpose of being able to show and explain where that is. But that particular update isn't one that's necessary. So ignore that. The next thing that we need to do, this isn't strictly necessary, but it kind of is. We need to take a trip to the Microsoft Store, and we need to pick up the Windows terminal. So Microsoft Store is available in your search, and as soon as this loads, we'll just get the Windows terminal. There's nothing super special about that, but the Windows terminal, although we don't strictly need it for this process, it has things that are available in it that are not available in command. Certain support, for example, font support is not available in the command terminal, which is the default one. So we need to click on this. Hopefully it'll load here, and then we just click and get it, and we're good to go. So that is step 2, is we're getting Windows terminal. Step 3, I will talk about in just a second. Once we've gotten this, I'm just going to go silent for a minute. Okay, so the install button is there. It's just down towards the bottom. So I am not going to sign in. No, thank you. All right. It's doing its thing. And I'm just being silent here because this is going to get edited out anyway. Okay, we're going to go ahead and launch the Windows terminal. And I'm going to close out the Microsoft Store so we don't have a bunch of clutter here. All right, and it should be fine that we're in PowerShell. The next thing that we need to do, there's a bunch of PowerShell commands that we need to run to install certain system services in a particular order. You can also go through the system preferences menus and do it that way, but I find it's a lot more reliable and consistent if we can do it from the command line. So I'm going to open up, nope, get rid of Cortana, that's not what I wanted. I'm going to open up Microsoft Edge, and we're going to webinstall.dev/WSL, which is where I have the cheat sheet for being able to quickly install the Windows subsystem for Linux. And there's a single copy-paste command that we need if the page will ever open. Oh, there it goes. Now it's opening all at once. Come on. All right, so we're going to go to webinstall.dev. Just going to let this take up the whole window for a minute. And let me close out of these other ones here. Didn't mean to open up 10 of these things. But you know how that goes. So at webinstall.dev, if we scroll down towards the bottom, there are the system utilities, and we've got WSL right here. This covers both WSL and WSL2. And the way that it works, like I said, is it's going to run some PowerShell commands. Actually, I'm going to click the copy button since I'm in a virtual machine and copying and pasting doesn't always work as hoped. I'm going to minimize that for now. I'm going to paste this in, and it's going to run a variety of commands, and it's going to ask for administrative privileges to be able to do that. It's going to take a couple minutes. It has to do some downloads, and when it's done, we're actually going to have to restart the computer. Okay, so what happens quite often, especially if you're in a virtual machine on Windows, is that sometimes it gets stuck, and all you have to do is press the enter key to make it continue moving along. It doesn't as frequently happen on Windows that's on a Windows computer hardware, but it does still happen. I've seen it happen in both places. This is a known bug, can't be fixed for historical reasons. Talked with a Microsoft engineer about it. Anyway, so here we have it asking us, do we want to allow administrator privileges to this script? And we do, because what it's doing is running through the different processes for how to install things. Well, we'll see right here. So the first thing it's doing is it's installing the Microsoft Windows subsystem for Linux, WSL, and then there's some supporting features that need to be added on top of that in order for it to work correctly. So now it's also installed the virtual machine platform, otherwise known as Hyper-V. And now this is for WSL2. It's installing the Linux kernel, a special Microsoft version of the Linux kernel. I guess while we wait, I might as well explain the difference between WSL1 and WSL2. WSL1 is a syscall layer, meaning that it's not doing virtualization. Everything is running on the Windows kernel, but there's just a shim in between. If you've been a Linux user and you're familiar with Wine, this is the same thing, except that Microsoft put a lot of engineering effort into it to make it nearly 100% compatible. WSL2, on the other hand, is actually a virtual machine. Okay, So let's take a look here. This is important information. We're going to have to reboot the computer again because for some reason the component can only install when the computer is booting, not while it's running. So in order for this component to finish installing, we reboot, and then we're going to run this script again. It's going to go through, find that the component that is missing, that was missing now, is installed, and then it's going to complete installing a few more of the other virtualization components. So I'm going to go ahead and take the easy way of doing this, of copying the Windows shutdown command and pasting it. Oh, no, that didn't work. Okay. In Windows Terminal, I think I actually have to do Control-C to copy, whereas in the command.exe, you select and then you hit Enter to copy, which this is a lot more intuitive. And was there anything else that we need there? No. Okay. So running the shutdown command, it's letting me know, hey, we're going to shut down Windows. Great. Go ahead and shut down Windows. So we wait for it to reboot, and it's going to be installing those Windows Services for Linux virtual machine components as it boots up. Okay, so now those features are installed. We just need to log back in and continue the installation from where we left off. I see that somebody joined in watching. So I'm going to talk right now just because I can't. If you want to leave a comment below. Oh, and they're off. All right, and now we're ready to go back to, actually we need to go back to Edge. Go ahead and restore so that we're back to the WSL installer page. And there's lots of notes on here if you want to learn more about what's going on and why. Oops. But for right now, I'm just going to copy this. We're going to go back, open Windows Terminal. Go ahead and paste in that script. Let it run. And again, if it gets stuck at any point, just hit the Enter key and it'll keep doing. It's strange Windows bug with the terminal. Okay, yes, I want to continue. And again, it's going to go through some of the same things as before. It's just going to be a little quicker. All right, so everything is complete. We've got Ubuntu Linux was installed as part of that process. It was downloaded from the Microsoft Store. Now what we need to do is open Ubuntu for the first time, and this is strange, but we have to open it from the Start menu. If we try to search for it, it won't be available in the search. It's just kind of a strange security feature. So before this works the way we expect, and this is opening in command.exe. So this isn't going to have proper font support. There's going to be a bunch of things that are wonky. So you're not going to want to generally run your Linux in command.exe. You're going to want it to be running in the Windows terminal. But we just do this little bit of first setup in the Windows or in command.exe. And then sometimes I've found that this freezes too, so I'm just going to hit enter on my keyboard in case it actually is done and just not showing yet. Okay, so now we're at the point where we need to pick a username. Just pick app as an APP, like application. That's kind of the common default name that people are using these days for Linux containerized services, and it's a good one to go with. It makes sense. So I'm going to do that. And the password here doesn't really matter. I go over this in the cheat sheet, which I'll review on the webpage in just a minute. But the password is more just because it's part of the way Linux works. It's not really effective in any sense because you can just run a WSL command to log in to the user without giving the password at all. So it doesn't matter what you put there, and if you forget, it's super easy to reset. All right, so here we are. We're logged in. Now what we need to do is we need to exit cleanly out of this so that it'll show up in search in the future. So I'm just going to hit exit. So now that it's exited cleanly once, if we search for Ubuntu, now it will show up, whereas before it wouldn't have. Kind of a weird thing. Also, I don't recommend that, like I said, I don't recommend that you use command.exe. I recommend that you use Windows Terminal. So we're probably going to have to close this out. We might even have to reboot, and then we'll be able to see the Ubuntu option appear. So let me close that out entirely. And we'll go over some of the notes in here in just a second, but I'm going to bring that back up and hope that now it's there and I don't have to reboot in order for it to show up. Okay, cool. It's right there. Awesome. So let me go ahead and open that up just so that we can see what it's like. All right, it worked. Huzzah. And let me get back to the web page here. I'm actually going to exit out of this. Now, I'm in a virtual machine, so I may not be able to enable WSL2. Most of the time, you don't need WSL2. You'll know if you do because you'll be doing something that has direct interactions with the Linux kernel, such as creating virtual block devices or device drivers, that sort of thing. But typically speaking, WSL, the default install, works. Both are installed, but you have to switch between them. So I'm going to go ahead and try. We'll see if this works, to switch to WSL2. If it doesn't, it doesn't always work because your computer itself doesn't always support it. The virtual machine that I've set up should support it, but it's not guaranteed. So I actually hadn't tried this yet, but we're going to take this, and the command is WSL space -- set -version, Ubuntu -20.04, and then 2 sets the WSL version. So you can have multiple versions of Linux, or multiple, not versions, but multiple Linux systems created, and each of them can be in one mode or the other. And you can transition between the two modes. It just takes a minute to convert it, as we'll probably see here in a second. So yeah, the conversion is in process. It's going to take a couple minutes. So I don't know exactly what it's doing, but it is preparing it to be able to boot rather than with the Microsoft Linux shim layer to boot with an actual Linux kernel. So we'll just sit and wait for that. Okay, so that's done. Now, if I go into my Ubuntu 20.04, it looks like it worked as expected. I think that I am in WSL2 on here. Let me think if there's a good way to test that. See if my device tree is full. I think it might be even when it isn't. Oh, let's check proc. Well, I don't want to do this on the video here. I'll figure out how we test to make sure that it ran in the system that we expect it to, and then post that in the comments and update the cheat sheet accordingly. But oh, excuse me. But if you want to go through this process manually rather than using the script, I have here listed all the commands that you need to run individually. And what you'll need to do, though, is you'll need to run them in an administrative shell. And some of the stuff, like I said, it's a little complex and the information that's out there is confusing. So I put this together in a way for you that it's just going to work. You can get your Linux, you can get done what you need to get done. So with that out of the way, if any of this was useful for you, you had any of those little aha moments, it got you past the stuck point, please give it a like. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to, if you want to be able to participate, subscribe to the live channel that's linked in the description. Otherwise, if you just want the edited videos, go ahead and subscribe to the Beyond Code Bootcamp, and you can see the description to the playlist for that below. And I think there was one more thing here. Oh, I want to let you know that the next video that I'm going to do in just a couple minutes is going to be on being able to use nerd font in the Windows terminal. This is pretty quick and simple, but I'm going to walk you through it. You cannot use it with the command.exe. Anyway, I think that we got everything that was important out of the way. I hope you're able to take some notes and be able to use this in the future. You have the best day ever. Adios.